Hey everyone, my name is Todd Bly11, and we are seconds away from I'm Going In Starting Up. It's the newest podcast sharing stories of adversity, strength, and love from some amazing guests. So here we go. Are you ready? Three, two, one. Hey, welcome to I'm Going In. I'm the host, Todd Bly11, and I'm joined by a really special guest, somebody that I got a chance to meet a number of weeks ago out at the Twins fantasy camp. This guy is just a great friend of my dad's. My dad thinks the world of him. Devin Smeltzer. He's a left-handed pitcher at the major league level, which is pretty amazing. And you've got an incredible story. When we were in Florida, and I got a chance to meet you. I thought number one, just the way you carry yourself, how articulate you are, you could just tell, man, like you're just a good guy. And number one, and number two, like we really started getting deep into your story after I started sharing mine. And wow, I really appreciated the time we got a chance to talk. And so I appreciate you coming on the podcast and getting a chance to really explore why you went in certain aspects of your life to help yourself, and then what you're doing now to go in to help others. So I don't want to steal your thunder, but welcome to I'm Going In.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was an absolute pleasure hearing your story. It was extremely touching. On the way home earlier, I was talking to my wife about it, and with everything I've been through, hearing your story, it was one of the most emotionally connecting stories that I've ever heard. Um, I mean, unbelievably powerful. The strength that you have, the power in God that guardian angel you had that carried you through your story. It really hit home, and we talked a little bit about in that clubhouse about, I heard that podcast with Jocko about perspective from the darkness. And, everybody's got their own trials and tribulations and struggles and trauma. And we talked a little bit how sometimes it's hard to relate. And, once I understood that, it kind of made things easier and made it easier to connect with people. But yeah, a little bit about myself. I grew up
Yeah.
in South Jersey. Um, Played baseball my whole life. It's been my passion since I was 4 years old. And then had a little bit of a road bump right before my 10th birthday. Was diagnosed with bladder and prostate cancer. It was called rhabdomyosarcoma. Started having problems in March of '05. As the tumor grew, the volume of my bladder was getting, filled with tumor. So I constantly had to pee. I remember, playing little league ball, and I'd run out to the outfield, and, 1 out, 2 out, I start getting the pee dance going.
Mhm.
And I'd have to sprint off the field. We started keeping jugs in the corner of the dugout. And I'll never forget, one of the craziest stories is when things started really getting bad. It was in the Magnolia tournament, which was one of the coolest tournaments for me to ever play in. It's a town my dad grew up in. All his buddies from baseball were there, coaching, umpiring. So it was just like a full circle moment for him. And, you know, fast forward a few months, I get diagnosed with cancer. But in that moment, we didn't know. And I'll never forget, I had an at bat where I looked at the coach and said, if I don't hit a home run, I'm going to piss my pants. Um, I remember going up to the plate and hacking, and I sprinted around the bases faster than I ever have. Ball went over the fence, came in, peed in the jug, just complete craziness. And I'd been to doctors up and down the East Coast.
Wow.
Nobody had thought to look for bladder and prostate cancer
That's
in
what
a
I was going to
9-year-old.
ask you. Like, I mean, here you are, you're growing up in Jersey and you're playing ball and probably out on the streets too, wherever you're at, right? Just being a normal kid. At what point did you realize like, okay, there's something going on, or did your parents realize that?
So, I mean, we both kind of started realizing at the same time. I was going to the bathroom way too much. And then it got to the
Okay.
point as the tumor grew, my bladder couldn't hold as much. So I really wasn't going, but I had to go because the tumor was telling my brain that my bladder was full. Um, so we were in Disney World, and I forget what ride it was on, but we would get to the front of the line and I'd be like, Dad, I gotta go. And it was 2 or 3 times we try riding this ride. We wait in line, get to the front, and I'll never forget this girl working in Disney after the third time looked at my dad and was like, "Hey, when you come back, just come to the front of the line." Like she realized something was off. So we rode the ride and we went to a doctor down there because things were getting pretty bad at this point. And everyone just kept saying, like, they would do this thing where they would put their hand on my bladder and tap, and you can like vocally hear the sound or audibly hear the sound, and they'd be like, your bladder's full. And my dad, he's a Northeast guy. He's starting to get to the point where it's like, yeah, we know, like, but what's going on? Like, there's something wrong.
Right.
Doctors after doctors, just kind of, yeah, it's a bladder infection. It's this, it's that. Until finally, one of the kids on my town ball team that my dad coached, his dad came up to mine and was like, "Hey, Harrison's dad is Rob Steckler. He's a big time pediatric urologist at St. Christopher's Hospital in Philly. I think you should talk to him." So we talked to him. He literally got us in the next morning. Went in. I was supposed to pitch that night in a huge championship game. I'm telling the doctors, like,
How old
I was
were you?
9.
You were
9.
still not okay. 9.
Yep. This was August of 05. And I'm telling the nurses, don't touch my left arm. No IVs in my left arm. I got a big game tonight.
Typical baseball player.
Yeah.
Thing.
I got a big game tonight.
Yeah.
They end up popping the blood vessel in my right arm and have to go to my left. So now I'm pissed, right? Like, I got to pitch and now I'm going to have this needle in my arm all day. So I go in for an MRI, which is supposed to be like 45 minutes. They start getting some images, I guess, and that MRI turned in a little longer. Now it's getting to the point where I'm going to miss game time. I'm starting to get real frustrated, agitated. And they came in and were like, look, they found some things. So I wasn't going to go home that night. They were going to do a biopsy. I went in for a biopsy that night. I woke up the next morning in a hospital room. I had no shirt on, and I'll never forget. I looked down, and I had a port in.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
They knew what it was. They knew what was going on. They didn't want to have to knock me out again and put a port in, so they just put it in. And it wasn't long after that Dr. Steckler came in and kind of broke the news to my parents that there was a tumor the size of a grapefruit in my bladder.
Wow.
Gave my parents some decisions, for, reproductive purposes. They said you could put off treatments for, I think it was 2 weeks. They were going to pre-onset puberty with testosterone and human growth. And then they would be able to harvest, semen if I wanted to ever have kids. My parents were like, no, you just told me how big this tumor is. Like, we're starting chemo. We're starting treatments immediately.
Yeah.
So we started treatments immediately. Life was turned upside down. I, got a call in the hospital bed that day that they won the championship game. It was the whole team on the phone. It was super cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, that, August 5th of 05, my life was turned upside down. Started cancer treatments. We did chemo. So we did chemo for the whole year. And then it was around month 3, we did 9 weeks of radiation and chemo.
Wow.
But yeah, it was crazy. We found out once I was stable, they told my parents that if I had a appointment at CHOP, which is Children's Hospital of Philly, 2 weeks away. They said if I would have waited that 2 weeks, my bladder would have ruptured and I probably wouldn't have made it.
Well, man,
so
God was with you there.
Right place, right time.
Yeah.
God put Mr. Steckler right there Dr. Steckler right there for me, and, changed my life. That hospital, I'm forever in debt to them. They are family to me. My doctor is one of the greatest human beings you'll ever meet. When we got married in 2018, told me he wasn't going to be able to make it. because he works 24/7. This man lives out of the hospital.
Wow.
He doesn't have kids, never got married. The kids are his family. Um, he surprised us on our wedding day. He flew
Hmm.
in for the reception. Um, and I remember being up on stage right before my wife walks in, and I make eye contact with him, and I
Hmm.
just completely lose it. I'm bawling my eyes out. Um, we went through the whole ceremony. Um, so we walk out down the aisle to leave. He snuck out around, gave me a hug, said, "I'm on call. I got a flight," and flew out. He literally just came
Man,
in. So
gave me
just,
goosebumps.
I know,
Yeah.
just the,
So awesome.
the connections that we made with that hospital, um, what they did for baseball for me, Chase Utley and Jimmy Rollins, Mike Lieberthal, were all super, super involved with St. Chris, donating tickets. So we would be able to go to games when I was healthy for it. I got to meet Utley, and that's kind of where, my story really took off. Um, you know, coming up through high school, um, I started to get better, and my story became pretty big in the area, and then getting drafted, and then I turned it down, went to school. So then I kind of had some touch in Florida, and before we knew it, once I got drafted, it was kind of a nationwide thing, became a worldwide thing when the Utley video, that full circle moment after I met him on the field as a kid, he got traded to the Dodgers. I'm in the Dodgers organization, and I went up to the farm director at the time. It was Brandon Gomes. I said, "Look, Gomi, I do not want this to be a big deal." I said, "I'm not a big deal guy. This isn't about me." I said, "I just want to thank Utley on behalf of my family, the hospital, for everything he did." He said, "Dude, yeah, no doubt." And a couple of weeks had gone by, nothing. It is what it is. It's spring training. It's the busiest time of the year.
Yeah.
Um, and he grabs me a couple of weeks later. He's like, "Hey, we're gonna take you over to meet him tomorrow." I said, "Awesome, awesome." I come in, TV crews. They mic me
Um,
up. I looked
yeah.
at him. Said some choice words at him.
Yeah.
He's like, "Did you really think we weren't going to make a big deal out of this?" And at that point, I realized how important them making it a big deal was.
Yeah.
Um, I started getting DMs, emails from people all over the world. They're reading my story to their kids, in the hospital beds for inspiration. And
Mm.
that's when I, really realized that, this isn't about me anymore. My story is about, getting other kids through this, getting their families through this, showing that there is light at the end of the tunnel and there's normalcy to come.
Devin, I mean, number one, I got chills again just in that moment. I know we spoke about that in the clubhouse in Fort Myers, and um, the strength, that you had to have had. I mean, here you are, you're 9 years old, you get diagnosed with cancer. I mean, you're probably thinking the worst. Your parents are there, went from normal kid, talented on the field, probably all over the place as a kid, to now like, what the heck is going to happen? And then to put the trust and everything into people that you just literally met through the doctors and the nurses, and taking, what was that process like? I know you said that they were amazing, but the hand holding probably through not just with your parents, but through you as a kid, and the explanation, right? You got friends that are like, what is going on with you?
Yeah,
And the perseverance that you had to fight through. Can you talk a little bit about that?
100%. I'll touch on my faith to kind of, start that part of the story. I went to church every Sunday growing up. And then when I got sick, it kind of, like, I couldn't go to church anymore. I couldn't go to school. I wasn't allowed in, crazy public places just because my immune system took such a big hit. Um, but I really struggled a lot with my faith. At 9, 10 years old, you're old enough to understand what's going on. Um, you're not blind to what's going on. You're
Mm.
feeling it. Something's
Yeah.
wrong. You don't fully know what cancer means, but it's not good. Um, and I question God, like, why me? And I, I'll be the first to tell you, when you talk about the nurses, I mean, they are absolute saints. The fact that they put up with me
Mm.
and still love me today is, I cry every time I see them, just I was a terrible patient. I was miserable. I didn't want anyone touching me. I had like 2 or 3 nurses that I trusted. And if I went in on a day and it wasn't their day to work, I was not a happy camper. I was just miserable. And there was one day it's kind of like how you talked about in your story, how you had that dream
Mhm.
afterwards with the guardian angel. Um, I woke up one day in the hospital. The light was brighter in the room that day.
Mm.
I had a different outlook. Um, I at that point on, I God instilled the faith in me that I was strong enough and gonna make it. And from that point on, I tried being a good friend to people in the hospital, being with them. Um, I had the faith and strength that I was going to make it, and there was a lot of kids that didn't. I still to this day say the hardest thing that I had to deal with cancer was losing my fighting buddies. One of my best friends in there, I think he was about a year and a half younger than me. His name was Frankie. Um, I think the first time he was diagnosed was like 2, and he relapsed 7 times, and the
Wow.
7th time took him. Um, that was arguably one of the hardest things that I ever went through in my life. Was losing him, and through the years, it got very hard to ask questions on how people were doing. Because it seemed like
Mm.
every time someone I was close with, or one of the big ones was baby Leah. She was less than 2 years old, um, like a baby, and I remember asking how she was doing, and my doctor's face, looked like he saw a ghost. And I got to the point from then on, it was very, very hard for me to ask those questions. But
Wow.
um, it God, gave me that strength and got me through it. Being in the Northeast, I was diagnosed in August, so I missed fall ball, and then
Mm.
we don't play ball in the winter. But
Yeah.
spring came around, and I remember going into the doctor and being like, "Hey, am I good to play?"
Yeah.
And he looked at the nurse, and he looked at my parents, and he's like, "If you feel up to it, sure." And the nurse practitioner, I remember her face was, no, like she was pissed. He's like, "Look, just don't be getting hit by pitches. Don't be diving in the outfield. Just be smart." Well, I was Northeast, hard nosed ball player. I used to dive over the plate to hit by pitches, and I'll never forget. It was in early midsummer. We had this big tournament, and we had a doubleheader. I got hit by a pitch in the first game and dove for a ball in center. And I had this bruise because
Oh
my platelets
man.
were so low, and I was so proud of this thing. But I was exhausted. I slept in between games, pitched the second game. I remember going into the hospital, and I'd be like pulling up my shirt, and he would just be like, "Oh, bud, what are you doing?" But still to this day, I think, again, God gave me that strength to be able to play. I know a lot of kids with different types of cancers that had roughly the same treatments that I had, um, that stopped moving, and they didn't lose the ability to walk, but they had to relearn to walk again. They were in wheelchairs or walkers, and um, I never lost the ability to move. And I give that all to God and giving me the ability to play through it. It kept me moving. It was my only sense of normalcy, um, in my life, was playing ball. It was the only time I was able. When I stepped between those lines, I wasn't a sick kid anymore. I was just a ball player.
Yeah.
Um, and I give everything that I am today, everything that I've accomplished, all to my determination and the power in God to give me that strength to, if you can get through this, you can deal with the options, the DFAs, the ups and downs, the trades, the slumps, the bad, outings. Because I was a sick kid in bed at one point.
That's amazing. The feeling that you had when you were sitting in that bed and the light just was brighter and everything else, that presence, that overwhelming wrap, right? That you get, whether it's from an angel or it's just Jesus putting his hand on you, or it's just your own mind being vulnerable enough at that time where you're approachable to take it all in and realize, you know what, I'm not alone, and I'm going to keep fighting. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep my boots moving forward, and I know that I've got people next to me. I'm welded to the hip of God, or I'm welded to the hip of my faith, whatever that is to you, and I've got that strength, right? And you kept moving forward. And I love the perseverance part of this too, where you didn't lay down. Yeah, you got dealt a really bad hand at that time, and we all do, but you stood back up, you pinned your shoulders back, right? And you kept moving forward, and you wanted to keep yourself normal as much as possible, which was probably extremely challenging. I mean, how many chemotherapy, how often did you have to go to the hospital? And at what point did it kind of subside where they were saying, okay, Devin, you seem like you're doing pretty good right now. You haven't gone to the hospital in a while. And then life became a little bit more normalized for you.
So for the treatment aspect, the plan that they had me on, um, I had inpatient treatment and I had outpatient treatment.
Okay.
Um, so there would be a few weeks where I would just go to the hospital every day. I'd sit in the chair, get my chemo, go home. But then there was the heavy stuff. They call them cocktails. It's where they start mixing a whole bunch. Um, and it's crazy. If there's one thing I learned about cancer treatments, they do not discriminate between good cells, bad cells, anything in between. Those drugs are prescribed through an algorithm that they get you as close to death as possible to make sure to keep you
Oh,
alive, if that makes sense. Um, I mean, you lose your hair, it was what it was. I thought it was cool at first because
mm,
I could
yeah.
use a washcloth head to toe. I didn't have to wash my hair. Um, and it was funny. I found the light in that. But the treatments were tough, especially those inpatient ones. Those were the knockdown ones. The outpatient ones, they banged you
Mm,
up, but they were the better part of it. The inpatient ones, I mean, I was knocked down pretty hard. I would go in for a couple days, and it was tough. And the thing that they're worried most about is the infections because your immune system takes such a hit. You lose a lot of your platelets and red blood cells, so your body just can't fight anything off. It's your body's there to stay alive, um, and they give you as much chemo as they can to just keep you alive and keep going. But yeah, they were gruesome, and then it got to the point where I started having the. I would go to Hahnemann Hospital in Philly and get my radiation. First 2 to 3 weeks, I thought radiation was the best thing in the world because you don't feel anything, you don't see anything. You lay on the table, they shoot you with some lasers, you're good. Uh, about week 5, my mindset changed on radiation a little bit.
mm,
Just because you didn't see or feel anything, it catches up to you pretty quick. And we were
mm.
still going. We would go from Hahnemann to St. Chris, and I would go from radiation and then go get my chemo and go home. But I ended up with real bad burns in my pelvic area from the chemo or from the radiation to the point where I was like, I couldn't stand, I couldn't sit. You're just constantly uncomfortable. It hurt. Um, Everything you eat um, just tears you up because, that area where I was getting radiated, um, it's not like it just goes to the tumor. It goes to that whole area.
Okay.
So it takes a big hit.
How old were you
You're
at this time, Devin, when you were going through that?
so I was diagnosed August 5th of '05, and then went into remission August 12th of '06. So it was a full year. I was 10. My birthday's in September. So I was
When you're
diagnosed right
going
before I
through
turned 10.
these, when you're going through the fifth, sixth week of that radiation, you're 10 years old.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
How did
And
you, when you were going through that part of it, knowing like it's going to hurt, I do not want to do this. What mentally uh, allowed you to just go forward? Was it if I don't do it, then I mean, did you even have that process of, if I don't
I had
do
no
that, like
choice.
you had no choice, right?
At 10, you can't drive a car, you can't run away.
Yeah.
You know, my parents were driving me to treatments whether I wanted to get in the car or not. And rightfully so. I mean, I think one of the scariest things you see with adults is they do have that choice to
Yeah.
skip treatments or not go. Um, did not have that choice at 10. My parents were awesome. They pushed through it. God, I don't know how they did it. Still to this day, going through the treatment sucks, but I can't imagine being a parent looking at your kid and not being able to do anything.
Yeah.
The only thing they can do is hug me, feed me, and bring me to my treatments. Right? Like they can't take it from me. They can't do the treatments for me. Um, so watching them suffer was, extremely difficult too. It weighs heavy on a marriage. It weighs heavy on my little brother he's
Mm.
6 years younger than me. Um, Same thing. He's 3, 4 years old. He knows something's up. He knows something's wrong. He's, getting bounced around the babysitters and other friends' houses while my dad's working 3 jobs, mom's working 2. They're driving all over the place. Like I remember my dad got a brand new truck right before I was diagnosed, and it was like by the end of that year, he had like 60,000 miles on his truck because he'd be going to work to home to pick me up, take me to the hospital, or my mom would have me at the hospital, and then after work he would drive over there. Like it's just complete craziness, and that weighs a ton on the family. And we stayed strong, and it, it's I give everything to where I am today to my doctors, the strength in God, and my family and friends that were there for me. Another really big thing for me, and this was, I think, where I really understood what my job was. I think we all have a purpose in the world. God gives us all a purpose, right? Like you were where you were in Vegas at that time for a reason.
Mhm.
Um, I have a pretty awesome story just off baseball alone. I got to the top 1% of the 1% playing ball. Um, but I also went through something crazy, and I knew with this platform that I was going to be able to reach kids that maybe I wouldn't have if I was, didn't play ball. Because one thing too for me, I love my doctors like family. I love my family to death more than anything in the world. They can tell you everything's going to be fine, but they have to.
Mm.
Survivors for me was my biggest light. Um, when I met a survivor, you know, you didn't have to be a baseball player, right?
Yeah.
You could just be an everyday guy, everyday girl, whatever, that went through the same process that I went through, and they're living a normal life. That to me was one of my biggest strengths and drives, was seeing other people. And I knew what that made me feel. So especially when I was with the Twins, being able to go into a hospital with the Twins jersey on, or a Dodgers jersey on, or a Marlins jersey on,
Yeah.
and being able, I always felt like kids knew, um, because I'd be in there with other players, but I was able to connect with them more, and it felt like they gravitated towards me, and I was able to, pull up my shirt and be like, "Look, I got a port scar just like you," and the light in their eyes is just like, I can watch this guy on TV
That's
throw a
amazing.
baseball, and he was in this, the same situation I was, getting port access and MRIs, and you know, sharing little secrets about food. And because that's one of the hardest things too, is I lost my taste, um, with chemo. So not
Mm.
only is your appetite gone, but now everything tastes like pennies. Everything tasted like copper.
Wow.
Um, the only thing I found to work was like super salty, super spicy, which could run into trouble here and there with some of the treatments I was on. It would tear me up. But, I found that I could taste some things if they were to the extreme. I remember a good portion, I was living off of spicy Doritos, 3 cheese croutons, and Slim Jims. That was like the only thing that like I would even think about eating. And the doctors are like, look, where you're at, we don't care what you eat. You need to eat. Because the threat to me, and they weren't doing it to be mean, but if you don't eat, you're going to get a feeding tube, which is the tube down your nose and your stomach. If you get a feeding tube, you can't play baseball. So that was me, just stuffing croutons down my face and eating spicy Doritos and stuff and just finding a way to get by. And
Sounds like a minor league diet.
yeah. Oh man, things are different. I'm sure
Well,
when you played, even when I started playing, we eat like kings now. But yeah, it's definitely absolutely insane the stuff that you got to go through. And then one day you wake up and what you've been eating for the past 2 months that you love, you look at it and you automatically throw up. I remember walking in the house
mm,
one day and I forget what my mom was making, but it got to the point where like it wasn't until like a few years ago, probably 5 years ago now, that I like could start like stomaching like dishes with like cheese in them.
mm,
Um, for whatever reason, so you lose your taste, but my sense of smell went through the roof. Super
wow.
strong. And I'll never forget, I don't even remember what my mom was making, but I walked in the house and threw up.
Oh,
And she's like, oh, God, you've been eating this for 2 months. Now you won't like, and it would no rhyme or reason from one day to the next. What you were loving is, the most repulsive thing ever to you now. So that was one of the struggles too.
that was all through the chemo piece. Like that's all
Yeah,
just
that was all
the
chemo. Yeah.
yeah. Um, so all right, fast forward, you're playing now, right?
Mhm.
Let's go through like at what point did life start to normalize for you going through that to where I don't know if did it ever become a distant memory on what you went through, especially maybe going through high school or your journey up to the major league level?
I think life got back to full normalcy once I got to yearly checkups.
Okay.
Um, so once I went into remission, it was like biweekly checkups, monthly checkups. Then you went to like every 3 months, and then every 6 months. Once I got to those annual checkups, um, I didn't feel like the Grim Reaper was around the corner anymore. I
Got it.
felt like
Yeah.
I felt like I was in the clear. Um, I had some side effects which we knew was going to happen from radiation and chemo. Radiation's the big one. Um, Seems like every 5 to 7 years ish, something else pops up. Um, I had some bladder bleeds in high school. They went away, but then 2017. So I'm with the Dodgers at this point. It's my first full season. I started having pretty heavy bladder bleeds. Um, Started here and there, and then it was like once a month, once every other week, and it got to the point where every time I went pee was blood.
Mm,
Um, I was talking to my doctor. He said, "Look, like we knew this was going to happen at some point. Didn't expect it to be this early, but it is what it is. You're heavy and hard on your body. You're a professional athlete." Um, he's like, "If you can get through the season, we're good with that. Push through the season, and we'll take care of it in the off season." So I remember going home after that 2017 season, and this was where things got difficult. Long-term radiation side effects for a prostate cancer patient is normally, earliest you get prostate cancer is like 40.
mm,
So you're looking long term, you're 50 plus years old. I was 22, 23 years old.
wow.
So I remember going into a doctor and he's like, not touching you. Like, I have no idea how your body's going to respond. A 22-year-old body is much different than a 60-year-old body. The treatments were way different. Everything responds way different. So it took a couple doctors until finally Dr. Kudikoff and Fox Chase in Philly.
Mm,
He was a younger guy, real confident. He's like, I got this. We're good to go. We're going to take care of this. Um, I go into my pre-surgery consultation and he's talking and he goes, yeah, hopefully this buys you, a year or two. And I was like, what?
what? Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, this is going to be like a recurring issue. And I was like, oh boy. this is not good. So now I'm starting to panic because immediately everything for me is baseball, right? So
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go through this every off season. Um, I get the surgery. I wake up the next morning after the surgery, and he comes in. He goes, "Look," he goes, "I don't want to be overly optimistic, but the surgery went extremely well. Your
Hmm.
bladder responded extremely well to it." He goes, "I wouldn't be surprised if this, buys you 10 years." So I was like, all right, just get me through my
Let's
career. If I got to do
go.
it one more time in my career, great.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that recovery was tough. That took about a year for me to heal. Because it's called TERP and TEV. So they go in with it's like a little rake for cauterizing and then a plasma pen. And they pretty much,
Okay.
so the reason I was having bladder bleeds is from the radiation at so young, um, pretty much turned my bladder walls to thin, weak, brittle leather. So as I grew, those walls got thinner and thinner, exposing capillaries, and I was just bursting them constantly. And there's one really pissed off spot in there that they described as like a cut in the crack of your lip,
Got
like
it.
takes forever to heal. Um, so they went in and took care of all that, but the surgery went great, but the issue was the recovery. It was once a week, once every other week, that scab would regenerate. I'd have to pass it. It was just a complete nightmare. So I pitched through that in 2018.
You
Um,
played through that.
yeah, yeah, played through that.
Wow.
I was in Double A that year, and that was the
And
year I got
mind
traded to
you,
the Twins.
you're pitching and you're lifting your leg constantly and separating and driving and pulling. And I mean, that's just for people that may not understand the physicality of what your lower half goes through, right? And your core, especially where you were injured, you were pitching through that. That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah, and for me, I've always said
Yes.
my easiest day of the week is start day.
Hmm.
It's the preparation that kills you. It's the heavy lifts, it's the running and conditioning and all
Yeah.
that. So yeah, that year was tough, but got through it. Got traded to the Twins at the deadline in 2018. Um, Ended up finding out why those um, issues came about when they did a little bit earlier than they thought. I was taking Voltaren, which is a anti-inflammatory drug. Um, so I was still bleeding after the surgeries, but it was only after my start day, and I was taking a Voltaren before I started. For whatever reason, one day I forgot to take it.
Hmm.
I didn't bleed that night. I stayed up for God knows how long trying to figure out what did I do different? What did I eat different? Was there anything different in my preparation? Did I sleep different? Hydrate better? Came to the realization I didn't take the Voltaren that day.
Wow.
So I went next start without taking it. Didn't bleed. I said, okay, well, there's one way to find out if this was the issue or not. Next start, took the Voltaren, bled. So I started deep diving. And there was a study done at Harvard. It was like somebody's senior thesis or something, um, about NSAIDs, which is non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, um, and prostate cancer treatments. The
Okay.
only thing I could find, my doctors didn't know about it. Nobody knew about it. I brought it up to him. He goes, "There's not much study to be done, but there's also no way to research somebody your age because you're the only one." And it's been almost 18 years now, since all the cancer stuff. I've met one other kid that had prostate cancer at 12. So it's me and him. I have no idea. There's nobody I can lean on.
Yeah.
So it's all trial and error. And through the years, I've found things that really piss off my bladder that don't make sense. Tart cherry juice, which is supposed to be like one of the greatest things in the world for recovery. My bladder doesn't like it. Kombucha, found that out the hard way. Bladder does not like it. Um, so I just add them to the list of things I don't touch, stay away
Yeah.
from, find other alternatives. And um, yeah, I mean, it's been crazy. And yeah, one of the hardest things is just not having anybody to lean on that's been through it.
Yeah.
So it's all trial and error.
Wow. Which is why when you see a survivor, you get amped up on it because that person did it, right? And so you're just trying to
Yeah.
follow in that
Yeah.
pathway all the way through. And it's interesting too. I mean, you bring up like anti-inflammatories, from a baseball or sports perspective, young kids. I mean, you're always popping pills,
Yeah.
nonstop, like game day, right? It's going to help me get into the next inning or whatever. And
Oh yeah.
at this
Ibuprofen, playing. That's like the
ibuprofen,
running
ibuprofen.
joke. Um,
Yeah.
and it's one of those things. I always joke in a full baseball season, 162 games. If I have 25 starts, you might feel 100%, whatever that actually is,
Right.
2 or 3 times. You're always something's always barking, something's always cranky, whatever it is. Um, so yeah, kind of losing those anti-inflammatories was a little tough, but we've found ways around it, and we just get by.
Yeah. Amazing. So are you, uh, obviously I'm, taking a step back now and going into those hospitals, right?
Mhm.
Now you're on the other side of it and you're showing, that you had a port and you've got that jersey on now and these kids and the inspiration. Now you are the survivor. So
Mhm.
now to those kids, they're looking at you and you're like more than just a survivor. You're playing in the major leagues, which is amazing. And they get a chance to watch you on TV, which like creates this superstardom to what you're doing, right? And getting a chance to know you a little bit, and just seeing your tattoos and then hearing your story about like how you met your wife, and which I think is just super cool. You're like the modern day like Jack Sparrow type guy, it's kind of cool. But how does that make you feel um, when you're in that moment? And let me back up. I had an opportunity, like through baseball,
Mhm.
I was raised by my dad to like shake hands, treat people with respect. You never really know what someone's going through, but always be kind. And you never know where that relationship might take you, right? And so I got a chance to meet Mike Trout a few times.
Mhm.
Super awesome guy. And through relationships with the Angels, we had a friend that wanted to know if somebody from the Angels office could come down to the hospital and see this young boy, right?
Mhm.
Well, Mike graciously did that and just really impacted. I still I get calls and text messages from the family and my buddy just saying we just can't believe how cool that was. It was years ago that Mike did this. So the impact, and I know my dad watching him as a kid go down to the hospital. He used to get on the Harleys, and all the Angel pitchers would drive down to the hospital, right? Chalk in Orange County. And sometimes my dad would have like a Santa suit on, and TD would be rolling with them, and they'd make a huge thing of it because it is so super impactful, right? And
Yep.
you've got an opportunity to not just uplift for that moment that child or that adult that's in that bed, but uplift for their life and
Mhm.
give them inspiration and survival. Like you're basically creating a survival guide for them to keep moving. So how does that impact you today, and how can people learn more about what you went through and how they can help if you're someone of a survivor, you are a survivor, what can you do to join the fight that you're in, because you chose now to go in that moment, right? It was the Chase Utley piece, and when you recognize the cameras are on you, you realize, man, I got this story. And what are you doing with that now?
So I have Catch Cancer Looking.
Catch
We
cancer.
started T-shirts in 2018. Um, and it was decent. And then, but once I debuted, those T-shirts took off. Minnesota was awesome. I'll never forget. I saw one on the street. Um, I'm just walking. And baseball players are funny. It's the NBA. You walk past a guy and you're like, you probably play basketball. Football
Yeah,
players are larger than life, but baseball, you know, you got guys from Altuve to Judge, like all different shapes and sizes. So getting recognized on the street, with a guy with my shirt on, with my face on it, it was like the coolest thing in the world. Knowing that it's making an impact. There's people behind us. Um, for me, we raise money to help the families. So we kind of piggybacked off of there was a girl that passed away right before I was diagnosed, but her mom wanted to carry on and dad wanted to carry on her legacy. And they started Katie's Crusaders, um, which is a foundation that raises money for families for anything that they could need. I remember, I'm sure you've dealt with health insurance and how crazy all that stuff is. Stupid little things that cost ungodly amounts of money that just make life easier as a kid with cancer. One of the biggest things is numbing cream. Um,
Mm.
Little tubes of numbing cream that we would put on our port so you didn't feel it getting access.
Wow.
Um, I remember our insurance stopped covering it.
Mm.
And it's absurd how much this stupid little tube of numbing cream costs. Um, so what they would do is if there's a family, the insurance stopped covering it or they don't have health insurance or, whatever it may be, they'll cut a check for that. I know that they've cut checks to help parents catch up on mortgages. They send siblings on trips. They send the family on trips,
Wow.
getting dinners for them. They started Katie's Castle. Chop in Philly had a Ronald McDonald House. St. Christopher's did not. We were always kind of the stepchild hospital that didn't seem to get as much love from the city. And Ronald McDonald House, McDonald's would not put another McDonald House that close to the other one. Well, Katie's did not like that, and they don't take no for an answer. So they were like, "Screw it, we're going to start raising money and build our own." Well, then McDonald's found out about that and was like, okay, well, we'll match whatever it is. So now there's Ronald
Oh, that's
McDonald
awesome.
House that's partnered with Katie's Crusaders. Um,
Wow.
but that for me, when you go down the rabbit hole of cancer donation, like treatment money goes and donating to the hospital. And look, anything's better than nothing. But for me, I don't want somebody to donate $1,000 to the hospital and then all of a sudden it's a new coffee shop. Now that it's good for the families to have a new coffee shop, but you're not impacting those lives. I want to impact these kids and their families as much as we can. So this money goes and we're directly impacting. So when I started Catch Cancer Looking, it was just something to put my face on to get the fans behind it to then help those kids out. And now we help out. We still donate to Katie's Crusaders and we also help out. It's called Barbara's Friends. It's unfortunately pretty much the same situation as Katie, but down here at Galisano and Fort Myers. We do a big toy drive for them every year with some of the local baseball teams who my best friend down here, his kid, I'm his godfather. It's, super awesome. We've gotten super close over the years. He wanted to be an impact in that. So he started doing the toy drives. It's been an awesome hit. We take over a trailer load of toys every year right before Christmas. Because people know that, the families are busy, obviously, but I don't think some people really know how busy these families are. Like Christmas shopping is an afterthought. So
Yeah.
what we do is we donate all these toys and then the parents can come down and Christmas shop for their kids, to have a nice Christmas in the hospital to, make sure that they're taken care of and have a great Christmas and give them that little bit of sense of normalcy, put a smile on their face. So we've been doing that this was our third year. That's been awesome. Got to figure out a way. Katie's Crusaders used to do golf outing every year in October, but it became too much for the family. It's on my bucket list. We got to figure out a way to get a golf outing going, whether it's a spring training one or something that we can get players involved and get that back up because I know that was a huge fundraiser. It's a lot of fun to bring everybody together, have the
Yeah.
kids out if they're healthy for it. And then another big goal for me is I've been up and down a lot, so it's kind of hard to know where I'm at, but in Miami this year is one thing I told the front office last year. I feel like with my story, it was a little bit underutilized a little bit with the Twins. I wish I had a little bit more impact. It wasn't till the end of my time with them that I got hooked up with a hospital and found out that, they were been trying to get me for a few years, and had a great experience with them and Caribou Coffee. We
Hmm.
did a big drive for them where on Fridays they were donating during the month of September. And so I'm hoping, hopefully be able to plant some stakes in Miami for some time this year and be able to make an impact down there, especially since it's close to home here. But for me, I've always said, like, I love the group visits, um, but I love one-on-one visits. I love going in as Devin Smeltzer, not
Yeah.
Devin Smeltzer of the Miami Marlins, and without the
Yeah.
cameras and stuff. And, I think one of the biggest impacts I've had from that standpoint is I told my doctors and nurses, if there's a kid that's an athlete or a ball player, whatever it is, looks up to, like, just like sports, um, give them my cell number. I want to be
Hmm.
able to make that impact, make that connection. For me, performance is great. Obviously, it's going to keep my career going. Um, but if I can impact one kid and one family a year, it's a really damn good year.
That's amazing.
And it's crazy, right? Like, 2020 was a crazy year. We talked about that a little bit.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much selfishly I needed those visits. And when that got taken away from me, um, because of COVID and not being able to go into the hospitals and stuff, I realized how much, you know, I depend on that. That's grounding for me. You can be in the worst slump of your life hitting, the worst slump of your life pitching. You
Yeah.
go into a hospital, you immediately remember walking through those doors as a patient for me. And that brings me right back, right? Like, look,
Yeah.
you can go 0 for 25 as a pitcher with a 46 ERA. I woke up, I'm healthy, I'm getting through life, and I'm making an impact.
Yeah.
And those visits, they mean to me just as much, if not more, than they do to those kids.
That's got to be, it's got to be, when you think about even the trauma side of what you dealt with, right? And the perseverance and the strength to push through a lot of those adversities in your life that you had mentally, right? Physically, I mean, I was in God's hands, and the doctors and the nurses and everybody was there to give you what you needed. But the mental aspect of that to persevere through things, now when you go back, that's your grounding piece, but it's what you need to make sure that you're staying in balance,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
to know what you have to fight for and what you can push off to the side, because it doesn't really impact where your boots are taking you in your next steps, right? It's only going to bring you down. It's the
Yep.
anchor, right? The drama in life, the crap that we fight over sometimes that just doesn't have any bearing on who we are as people and what makes us feel good and what it burns into the inner parts of our soul, right?
Yep.
And in that moment, because I can relate to that. There's a relatable feeling of what, not, this isn't about me, but the trauma that I experienced, right? I keep that here in front of
Mm-hmm.
me, because if I let that sit back here, then it's only going to pound my head. It's going to force me to kind of maybe remember more bad things. But if I keep that trauma here, I can navigate through life with that trauma, knowing that this is going to be my balance point. This is
Mm-hmm.
going to allow me to appreciate what I have, where I'm at today, and like what I'm doing now, and sharing stories of adversity and strength, like in your impactful story. It provides that guidance and that survival guide for others that are knocked down in their life, right? Without that feeling that you have with wanting to go back and needing that, it's almost a force. And maybe that's God's way too, of kind of almost like a game, power pack, right? And it provides that power pack to you to go, man, I feel good. I know,
Yep.
this is a crappy thing that I'm stepping into with the kids or whoever that is that's going through that challenge, but it's my uplift. And if I can just pass that energy on to them just a little bit, oh, all right, I'm powered up. Now give me any hitter in the big leagues, or give me any situation at work, or give me any adversity they have to deal with in my life, but I'm not going to fight that by myself anymore, right? And I've got
Yeah.
this energy. So I would imagine it's something similar to that. And I don't know, knock on wood, luckily I haven't been able to experience what you went through, but the trauma part of it on the mental side, that uplift of you wanting to go back and always fight in that mix for other people is who you are. And it's just amazing. So,
Oh,
um,
thank you.
yeah, like I said, man, I mean, your story really hit me. I told my dad afterwards, I'm like, man, that Devin guy, he's a pretty cool guy. But you are, aside from the beard and the rings and the tats and all that stuff, there's just something about you that that guy's got it. And a lot of these podcasts that I'm doing and bringing on people, there's this almost a brotherhood or a sisterhood or some sort of connection that we all have, and
Mhm.
we've all dealt with some form of adversity or trauma, right? That
Yep.
connects all of us in a way that allows us to understand maybe that heartbeat, that feeling of sadness and darkness that we've encountered in our lives. And you don't have to go through a shooting, you don't have to go through cancer. It could be a car accident, it could be a bad marriage, it could just be a bad day in your life, and it just totally impacted your being. But the uplift is what's so amazing. So I really appreciate you sharing that story.
Of course. Thank you.
Yeah. We want to do our part in trying to promote as much as we can your cause, and just shedding awareness on these young people that have experienced that trauma, going through cancer, and the families. So we're going to do what we can to try to promote that, and maybe get a golf tournament going if you ever have one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, let's go. Let's get some people out there and go hack it
I
up a
love it.
little bit and make earn some money for
I appreciate that. And I'm a
yeah.
huge believer in, you cross paths with everybody for a reason. Um, and you were at camp this year and we were able to share those stories, and we all go through rough patches, ups and downs, and um, you know, you don't want anyone to ever go through trauma, but we all do. And when you let your guard down and you're able to connect with another person, I knew you for how many hours at that point, but
Mm.
I felt like I knew you forever. Felt like you were a friend, and obviously, I look at your dad as a good friend and mentor, and um, we cross paths for a reason, and I believe in that full heartedly, and getting that time with you these past few weeks has been awesome.
I really appreciate it. Yeah, the feeling's mutual. I
Thank you,
wholeheartedly agree with that. So
thank you.
I wish you the absolute greatest of strength and faith, and just as you're starting to go into this and getting ready for spring training, um, just to walk tall, man, and go do what you got to do. God's going to take care of everything else, but keep being the person you are. And I look forward to having a long friendship with you and doing my
Likewise,
part to try to help you in your efforts. So,
thank you,
yeah,
and I'm here for you too. And
appreciate it.
again, this is just the beginning, and I look forward to hopefully impacting some lives, and just like you're doing. Um, it's more than just cancer. If you can shed the light on somebody that's gone through some tough stuff and are in
Mhm.
a dark place and bring them out of it, I mean, that's why we're here, man. And God puts us in crazy places for a reason.
That's right. Well, thank you for being on I'm Going In. You certainly over amplified that message today. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.